You are only given 3 days to uncover the secrets this wicked land holds within its darkest corners. Among 14 strangers, you find yourself at the outskirts of a backwaters town of Prehevel. A town that still holds tight onto its ancient rites and macabre traditions. You are forced to partake in the Festival of Termina, an ominous event that only occurs once in every pale and sickly green moon. A moon that happens to be grinning and watching your every step. There is only one that walks away once the 3 days are over.
14 strangers, 3 short days, and one single rule. Only one person is allowed to survive. On the surface, the Festival of Termina is a brutal fight for survival, but behind it lie the intricate schemes of powerful forces. A jealous moon god, a secret society with a mysterious and ambitious project to replace the gods, and an evil entity doing everything it can to rise again and plunge the world into the flames of hatred. Is there any way out for the contestants trapped in this deadly festival? Or, in the end, has their fate already been decided by the power and influence of forces far greater than themselves? In this video, we will unravel the full mystery of the Festival of Termina, from the history and earliest origins of the festival to the major events that unfolded in Prehevel in 1942, before finally arriving at the true endings, where the role and true nature of the forces secretly manipulating the festival are revealed, along with the real way out for the contestants who were unknowingly drawn into this deadly event.
The Festival of Termina is an event arranged by the old gods. To our knowledge, the moon god is often involved in this puzzling jubilee. We do not understand the underlying meaning behind this festival, but in short, it is a free-for-all, a battle royale, if you will, between multiple contestants. Supposedly, there is a grand prize waiting at the end.
Termina is an event created by the old gods at some unknown point in the past. Most likely, it emerged during the age when the old gods were still present in the real world and directly guided humanity before they withdrew from this world after a mysterious event. The new gods, humans who attained divinity, exist within the grand hall of the gods and left a major influence on history, also admit that they do not fully understand the deeper meaning behind this festival. This suggests that the Festival of Termina has existed since the distant past and carries some kind of profound meaning, one that is at least different from how it is understood in the present. Although there is not much information about the festival in the past, one thing can be said with certainty. The Festival of Termina is heavily influenced by the events that take place in the world of The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask. Both revolve around the name Termina. Both are bound by a 3-day time limit. Both are tied to an abnormal moon. And both feature a festival held right before the moment of apocalypse. Majora's Mask takes place during the Carnival of Time, an annual festival held in Clocktown, the center of the world of Termina. It is a harvest festival, organized to honor the harmony between nature and time. At the same time, it is also an occasion for the people to pray to their guardian deities, the 4 giants, asking them to grant a prosperous new year and a bountiful harvest.
Each year, the season of harmony begins when the sun and moon are in alignment, paying homage to the way that both nature and time are tirelessly in the process of progressing. The Carnival of Time is when the peoples of the 4 worlds celebrate that harmony and request fruitfulness for the year.
Granny says that the carnival of time begins when the sun and moon are aligned, symbolizing the balance of nature. The core meaning of the festival is paying homage, showing respect for the endless flow of nature and time. At that time, people from the 4 major regions of Termina gather together to celebrate this harmony, while also praying for fertility, growth, and prosperity in the coming year. Placed within the context of fear and hunger, the Festival of Termina may once have carried a meaning similar to the Carnival of Time in Majora's Mask. A festival, a ritual in which people celebrated, gave thanks, and prayed for supernatural forces to grant them crops, wealth, and life.
Humans are such funny little creatures. Since the dawn of men, you've tried to please the sun god, to keep you warm and give good harvest. You've worshipped destruction and creation in the delusion that you'd have a say in those matters. You've given a name to each and every one of these forces. Even nature itself has a name given by you. It's a strange paradox. You throw yourself as a slave to these gods of your own creation. Only humans could be this silly. To the others, they are but natural forces. They are not there to help you, to harm you, or to be worshipped by you. They just exist in the greater scheme of things.
Since ancient times, humans have tried to appease the old gods by giving names to, worshipping, and praying to entities they could not explain. Although humanity gave them many names and worshipped them, these beings are, in essence, closer to primordial concepts or forces of nature. They do not help you, do not harm you, they simply exist. Based on that detail, the Festival of Termina may not have been a ritual deliberately created by the old gods themselves. At first, it may simply have been a festival to pray for warmth, fertility, abundant harvest, and the continued turning of the natural cycle. A festival of harmony, where humans gave thanks to natural powers they could not explain. That may have continued until a mysterious event occurred, an incident that caused the old gods to vanish completely from the real world. One noteworthy detail is that the Festival of Termina is usually held when the moon is full and at its highest point. Besides its direct connection to the god hiding behind it, this detail also carries a very interesting meaning, especially when placed in the context of crops, harvest, and abundance. In agricultural traditions of the Northern Hemisphere, the harvest moon is the full moon closest to the autumn equinox, usually falling in September or early October. This is the time when many crops have ripened and need to be harvested quickly before cold rain or frost arrives. Because the full moon near the autumn equinox often rises close to sunset for several nights in a row, it provides extra light after the sun goes down, allowing farmers to work in the fields longer. The full moon does not create a bountiful harvest, but it appears at the exact moment when the harvest season needs nighttime light the most. And so, in humanity's agricultural memory, the full moon gradually became a sign of harvest, abundance, and the time to gather the fruits of one's labor. The detail of the full moon and the harvest festival directly connects to the tale of Pocket Cat. The story tells of a festival held in the town of Merwood, an annual event that takes place at the beginning of the harvest season when food becomes plentiful. The townspeople celebrate, hold grand feasts, and most importantly, this event takes place exactly when the full moon has risen the highest. If this story is describing a past version of the Festival of Termina, it clarifies the conclusion we established earlier, that Termina may originally have been nothing more than a festival created by humans to express gratitude to the old gods for granting humanity bountiful harvests, plentiful food, and a life of abundance. The festival being held when the moon reaches its brightest and fullest state is similar to how Majora's Mask places its own festival at a special moment when the sun and moon are aligned. This detail may have been inspired by astronomical phenomena, such as the supermoon or the lunar standstill, a rare phenomenon in which the gravitational forces of the sun and moon enter a special alignment, sometimes leading to more noticeable changes in the tides or in the way humans observe the sky. Even though the festival of Termina may have nothing to do with this phenomenon at all, the similarity between them is still very much worth analyzing, isn't it? Well, anyway, no matter how it may have unfolded in the past, in the present, the festival of Termina has been completely corrupted in its nature, its meaning, and the way it operates. From an event that may once have been tied to harvests, abundance, and gratitude toward natural forces, Termina has become a blood-soaked festival. The moon no longer shines over the fields so humans can harvest their crops. It shines over the festival so its participants can freely slaughter one another, harvest each other's heads, and turn their souls into offerings for a ritual nourished by blood, madness, and the jealousy of the very entity hiding behind it, the moon god.
For hundreds of years, we have followed wherever the moon god took us, and we reaped his harvest instead, living and breathing from the chaos that ensues. Of course, we strive for the illustrious heights mentioned many times over, but to get there, we must climb a mountain of slain sacrificial lambs.
If the event in Majora's Mask began with a bizarre moon, then similarly, the festival of Termina also begins with the moon, or more precisely, with the entity hiding behind that celestial body. Rare is an old god, often referred to as the trickster god, or the moon god. His power is directly tied to moonlight. It is said that his light can pierce through the shell of deception, exposing the truth hidden beneath the surface of humanity. The moon god's power leans especially toward the spiritual and is capable of exerting a powerful influence on the mind. Some of the abilities associated with him include reading thoughts, seeing through his opponents, and opening golden gates. Gates described as a gift from the moon god himself. Gain access to golden gates that lead you out from madness and world of deceit. With his power, the moon god not only sees through the ugly nature of humankind, but also recognizes the immense potential hidden within those mortal bodies, a potential so great that some among them could rise to the level of the old gods. The moon god does not accept this, and so, since the earliest days, he has always watched, controlled, and sought every possible way to restrain the growth of this species. All of it stems from jealousy. The fact that the festival of Termina takes place when the moon is high, full, and at its brightest suggests that the connection between the festival and the moon god is almost impossible to ignore. Although the festival of Termina may originally have been held to honor the old gods, the moon god holds a more prominent role than any other in overseeing the festival and determining when it takes place. Perhaps this authority came from the consent of the other old gods, or perhaps humans themselves, by tying the festival to full moon nights, unknowingly caused the moon god's influence over this ritual to surpass that of the other gods. With that influence, at some unknown point in the past, possibly after the old gods withdrew from the real world, the festival of Termina began to be corrupted by the moon god. In the video about Pocket Cat, I once mentioned a theory that there may have been a divine pact among the old gods, limiting their ability to directly interfere in major events in the real world. If that theory is correct, the moon god would be no exception. So how did this entity corrupt the festival if he could not directly involve himself in it? Pocket Cat is the answer. Pocket Cat is a being born from the moon god's dream, created with the task of hunting children who carry within them the seed of humanity's ascension. Individuals with the potential to surpass mortal limits and reach the realm of divinity. But it does not stop there. Pocket Cat's appearance in the Festival of Termina in the second game shows that this creature also plays another role in the festival. A catalyst, manipulating, provoking, and pushing the contestants to slaughter one another, ensuring that the festival unfolds in the bloodiest way possible. At the same time, by taking advantage of the chaos of the festival, this creature can search for and possess its next potential host. Humans with promising souls, but who are mentally broken and pushed to their limits. If the festival in the tale of Pocket Cat that we analyzed earlier is an ancient version of the current Festival of Termina, then Pocket Cat's appearance in that story becomes a very notable clue. In the story, Pocket Cat also appears at the festival and vanishes exactly when the moon reaches its highest point. He is discovered howling at the moon, as if communicating with his master. Not only that, Pocket Cat also seems to observe and show a particular interest in Willem, similar to how he watches and targets Dawn as a host during the festival that takes place in 1942. This leads us to the conclusion that Pocket Cat may have appeared in many past cycles of the festival. He acts as a tool of the moon god, driving the corruption of the festival, while also using it to find his next parasitic host. This conclusion was suggested by a very interesting comment from a viewer on the channel, who proposed that Willem was actually the host Pocket Cat was targeting, much like Dawn in the second game. That theory helped me recognize the festival's original meaning and connect three seemingly separate elements: the moon god's intentions, Pocket Cat's appearance, and the later corruption of the Festival of Termina. So, shout out to Light Solia, and thank you for a theory that is genuinely worth thinking about. Returning to the main storyline, under Pocket Cat's influence, the original meaning of the Festival of Termina gradually changed. However, as mentioned earlier, Pocket Cat is only a catalyst, not the main cause behind the festival's complete corruption. Pocket Cat himself is also restrained by the moon god and prevented from directly interfering in the course of the festival. This makes perfect sense. Think about it. If Pocket Cat, a creation of the moon god, interfered with and manipulated the course of a festival originally created to honor the old gods, that would be a violation of the pact, as well as an open and direct insult to the other gods. Therefore, the moon god chose a more discreet method. He corrupted a human, turning him into the host of the festival, the one who would guide and oversee its events. That person is the true cause behind the death and complete corruption of the Festival of Termina that would follow.
Welcome to the Moon Tower. Since our words could not possibly reach my master, I speak on his behalf. And who might my master be? Well, for now, let's just say that he is the delinquent one. Rare, the trickster moon god. And me? You can call me Perkele. I am just a humble servant of his celestial majesty. You are the dreamer. He is the dream. My master has invited you to join us in this jubilee of cosmic proportions. 14 candidates, but only one true victor. The Festival of Termina is upon us. What is this Festival of Termina, you ask? It is a festival to give you, the humans, a peek to grandeur and a chance to reach for illustrious heights. The festival to end all festivals.
Perkele is a mysterious entity said to have served the moon god for hundreds of years. He oversees and coordinates the festival by appearing in the contestants' dreams, speaking to them, and delivering the rules on behalf of his master. Beyond that role, Perkele's true past is almost entirely unrevealed. The only clue we have about Perkele is that he once admitted he had been human, or at least human in the broadest sense of the word. He once stumbled into a festival in the past, and only after that incident was he truly born. This means that, in some way, most likely by winning the festival, Perkele was blessed and transformed. Unlike the new gods, who ascended through the throne of ascension, Perkele seems to have reached a demigod-like state through a different path, a ritual, or some form of ancient magic tied to the moon god. Something similar once happened to Lagarde in the ending, where he is revived by Dars, using the ancient magic of the old god Sylvian. Lagarde returned with a deformed body. He shed his human skin, mocked his former mortal existence, and declared that he had reached a divine state. Perkele's body, much like Lagarde's, still retains a few human features, but it is no longer whole. His torso has rotted away and severely decomposed, the price paid for being reborn under the power of an old god. That is why the new gods mock Perkele. They call him and his group leeches, who survive by clinging to the power of greater beings. In their eyes, Perkele is not a god who achieved true ascension, but a parasite feeding on the power of the old gods. Perkele does not care. On the contrary, he looks at both the new gods and humanity with mockery. To him, both are foolish in their own ways. Humans bind themselves to the worship of forces they do not understand, while the new gods are arrogant beings deluded by their own power, even though in truth they are still trapped under the manipulation and control of the old god's game. Osa, one of the 14 contestants, once mentions that he has heard the name Perkele somewhere in the past. He is a deity connected to something known as the Festival of Termina. Information about this festival is extremely vague, but it often appears during periods of chaos tied to numerous massacres throughout history. This detail shows that Perkele did not appear only during the event in Prehevel in 1942. This entity may have served as the host and spokesperson of the moon god, accompanying Pocket Cat and the other followers as they influenced past cycles of the Festival of Termina. Over time, they themselves helped corrupt the festival. From an ancient ritual once tied to harvest, gods, and prosperity, Termina gradually became the center of a series of bloody massacres throughout history. That cycle continued until the festival opened once again in 1942 in Prehevel. There, Perkele, Pocket Cat, and his group returned, continuing to lead the chosen ones into a new cycle of the festival, a festival built on dreams, the moon, madness, and the blood of the contestants, all to honor the master watching them from above, at least on the surface. Fear and Hunger 2, Termina begins in 1942, roughly 350 years after the events of Fear and Hunger 1. By this point, the moon god has already failed to prevent the ascension of the girl, leading to the birth of a new god, the god of fear and hunger. The main setting of this installment is Prehevel, a fictional city with an Eastern European atmosphere, medium-sized and relatively isolated. Prehevel is the capital of Bohemia, as well as the stage chosen for this cycle of the Festival of Termina. Prehevel is a favored city, situated between several different ecosystems. Located near the western shore of Lake Verdite, surrounded by old forests and unique vegetation. The city gives us a sense of isolation, as though it is completely cut off from the rest of the world. At the heart of the city stands Hollow Tower, a mysterious structure that is later seized by Perkele and turned into the central point of the festival. Hollow Tower functions like a broadcasting tower in the middle of the city, allowing Perkele to use the moon god's power to pull every contestant and citizen into a dream realm, where he explains the rules and officially begins the festival. The city's scholars possess an astonishing amount of knowledge about astrology, so deep that even the new gods take notice. This makes me speculate that, perhaps in the past, Hollow Tower was used by Prehevel's scholars to study astrology and observe the stars. The clock in the Prehevel Museum shares many similarities with the Prague astronomical clock, a medieval astronomical clock mounted on the old town hall in real world. This detail quietly reinforces the city's long history and tradition of astrological study. The similarity in design between Hollow Tower and the Leaning Tower of Pisa is also worth noting. The Leaning Tower of Pisa was originally a religious bell tower, used to call believers to rituals, mark prayer times, or announce important moments in the liturgical calendar. Since fear and hunger is well known for borrowing many details from the real world and then restructuring them into a more distorted and independent version of its own, it can be inferred that Hollow Tower may once have served a similar religious function. It can be said that Hollow Tower is not merely a structure reflecting the architecture, culture, or art of Prehevel. It also directly reflects the city's religious life. Speaking of religion, Prehevel is famous for its fanatical devotion to Almer, the Ascended One, an ascended god and a darker, more distorted version of the figure of Jesus Christ in the real world. Not only that, the people here also maintain a very strong religious connection to the old gods, entities that long ago withdrew from the real world. The Church of Almer took advantage of this somewhat extreme foundation of faith in the god to turn Prehevel into an important religious center. The leading priests did not merely guide the spiritual lives of the residents, but also abused them through occult magic and bloody sacrificial rituals. Part of this corruption very likely came from the influence of the mysterious god hiding behind Almer and his church. It is clear that the overlap between public faith, folk occultism, ritual architecture, and an isolated mindset toward the outside world is what made Prehevel a special place, even before the festival of Termina erupted. In 1942, after the Second Great War broke out, Prehevel was heavily affected by the consequences of the war. Part of the city was bombed and almost completely destroyed. Mines and barricades were set up everywhere to stop opposing forces, leaving Prehevel, already isolated, almost entirely cut off from the outside world, while the chaos within continued to spread. The city authorities tried to impose martial law to bring the situation under control, but every effort failed when the people were struck by a strange disease. Their skin suffered severe burns, while their minds were gradually burned away over time. This disease corroded all of Prehevel from within. The residents lost their sanity, became violent, and grew deformed. The army occupying the city suffered the same fate. Many soldiers went mad, lost control, and turned to slaughtering civilians, their comrades, and even their own superiors.
You must have seen them, the residents of this God-forsaken place. That fate awaits us all. My comrades already succumbed to the chaos. My skin is still pretty, but my mind is deteriorating at a rapid rate. 3 days. 3 days is the limit, just like what he said.
Before Prehevel completely fell into a state of chaos, the people had been whispering about a strange event. For about a week after the night of the full moon, people across the city and the surrounding settlements all had the same bizarre dream. A mysterious man in an orange cloak standing at the top of a tower, explaining a strange festival, the reward awaiting those who took part, and the punishment that would come if they failed to follow the rules within the 3-day limit. It is not hard to recognize who the man in the dream is. None other than Perkele. The appearance of this monstrous figure means that the moon god had chosen Prehevel as the main stage for this cycle of the festival of Termina. We still do not know the moon god's true intentions at this point. But one thing is almost certain. This god had set his sights on Prehevel even before the festival officially began. This is further reinforced when we look at the lore of the 14 participants. Most of the contestants are not residents of the city, yet each of them is led to this place by a chain of events that seem unrelated on the surface, but clearly bear the marks of deliberate arrangement. Some come to investigate the war. Some come to search for a loved one. Some follow the trail of a personal secret. Others are pulled back by their past. All of them are like chess pieces gradually being pushed toward the same destination. And that destination is Prehevel. Perkele once revealed that the contestants are chosen by the moon god. We cannot rule out the possibility that he himself had been watching them and quietly guiding them all to Prehevel to take part in this festival. But there is another possibility. In my view, the moon god may have recognized the intricate plan of some force secretly manipulating the flow of fate and leading the 14 contestants to Prehevel. Because of this, he chose Prehevel as the stage for the festival of Termina, forced all the contestants into the festival, and used Termina's own rules to stop this mysterious force's plan. This theory is subtly reinforced right from the opening. While on the train heading toward the city, all 14 contestants share the same dream. There, under the guidance of an illusion of a girl in red shoes, appearing with blue butterfly wings, the contestants are taken to 2 mysterious dimensions. The first is a workshop filled with cubes engraved with strange symbols. The other space is a vast hall where countless non-human entities sit motionless on chairs. It seems that the girl in red shoes and this group of mysterious entities are trying to bring the 14 contestants to some unknown place. But that plan is immediately obstructed by Perkele. Using the power of the moon god, Perkele interferes with the dream and pulls the contestants into another dimension. At the top of the tower, Perkele welcomes them, explains the rules, declares that the 14 contestants have been chosen, and officially opens the festival of Termina.
Welcome back. I take it that you are now acquainted with most of your fellow contestants. Keep up the pace. The festival won't last forever. Just what is going on? Since the 14 of you are such late additions to the party, your days are already running short. The festival will reach its climax in just 3 days. That is how much time you have. Use it wisely. My master has a short attention span. If any of the 13 other contestants are still around when midnight hits on day 3, well, I guess you will just have to wait and see. However, it is not advised to wait until that.
The fact that Perkele calls the 14 contestants latecomers, while warning them that they have only 3 days left before a terrible calamity occurs, leads us to an important conclusion. Termina is not an event that revolves solely around the 14 chosen ones. It is a festival made up of multiple stages, culminating in the final 3 days, the moment when the contestants are thrown onto a stage that has already been prepared, with rules that force them to slaughter one another. The course of the festival can be divided into 3 main stages: The first stage, the prophetic dream before the festival. About a week before the full moon appears, Perkley begins appearing in the dreams of the people of Prehevel and the surrounding settlements. He announces the festival, explains the rules, speaks of the reward awaiting those who take part, and warns of the punishment they will face if they fail to obey the time limit. This is the point where the festival begins to seep into people's minds before it truly erupts in the real world. The second stage, the full moon and the activation of the festival. When the full moon rises high, the festival officially enters its active phase. The countdown begins. Every civilian and soldier in the city, those who do not understand, are unaware of, or accidentally fail to follow the rules of the festival, begin to suffer the disaster. A strange disease appears, deforming their bodies, breaking down their minds, and spreading corruption throughout Prehevel. The third stage, the collapse of the city and the arrival of the 14 contestants. Prehevel descends completely into chaos. Civilians and soldiers alike are transformed into grotesque creatures, hunting down and attacking anyone within sight. By this point, the city has become a blood-soaked battlefield, ready for the arrival of the final group of participants, the 14 chosen ones. Perkley appears once again. He pulls the 14 contestants into the dream realm at the Moon Tower, explains the rules, and declares that they have only 3 days to eliminate one another until only one survivor remains. If they fail, a terrible calamity will descend. As we can see, the first 2 stages of the festival serve as preparation for the third act, the moment when the contestants officially enter the festival. Think about it. If Prehevel were still a normal city, the contestants would have no real reason to openly slaughter one another, would they? That is why it is necessary to plunge the city into chaos, filling it with dangers severe enough to pressure their minds, make them afraid, disoriented, and gradually push them towards seeing murder as their only choice. Not only that, but the calamity Perkley warns will descend after the 3-day deadline also serves as a catalyst, making everything even worse. Perkley specifically emphasizes that the moon god is slowly losing patience. This suggests that his influence over Termina has limits. It may be connected to the monthly cycle of the moon's phases. Once the full moon phase ends, the moon god's influence declines, and the festival ends along with it. In other words, the moon god is forced to deal with all of the contestants within the time frame of the festival. If even one is left behind, that person could become a variable capable of ruining the entire plan he has so carefully set in motion. The question is, what calamity will descend if the contestants fail to follow the rules after the 3-day deadline? And how can the moon god make it happen? We already have the answer when we look at the transformed state of the civilians and soldiers in Prehevel, or more precisely, the disease they are suffering from.
My skin, myself, I'm changing. It burns. I feel so cold. I can feel it inside me. It crawled under my skin. Take it off! Take it off, please!
Moonscorch is a strange disease caused by the light of the moon god. This phenomenon has been known to humanity since ancient times and was even recorded as early as the 9th century under the name moonlight cancer. Those afflicted by this disease develop very clear symptoms: severe burns, dry and cracked skin, scars, and abnormal growths appearing across the body. As the disease progresses, it leads to severe deformation, usually beginning with the face. The features stretch, distort, and gradually lose their original human shape. Most victims of moonscorch still retain a human silhouette, even though their appearance has been deformed and their minds have fallen into varying degrees of madness. In some cases, however, the transformation pushes them even further. Their bodies become monstrous, take on animal-like traits, or even develop supernatural abilities. It does not only affect the body. Moon scorch also causes severe psychological effects. Many victims completely lose the ability to communicate, doing nothing but threatening, growling, or muttering meaningless words. Some become so aggressive that they attack anyone who comes into view. Another common symptom is parasitic delusion, where victims believe something is crawling beneath their skin. This hallucination makes them even more agitated, causing them to constantly claw and tear at their own bodies, worsening their deformation even further. Even so, not every creature affected by the moonlight loses their reason completely. Some still retain fragments of memory, loyalty, or old habits. In rare cases, such as the gentleman or the butler Jeeves, they can even speak relatively normally, though their mental state is no longer stable, and they may become violent if provoked. After stage 2, almost the entire population of Prehevel, along with the Bremen army occupying the city, has fallen to the effects of the moonlight. This can be seen as the punishment for those who do not participate in, or do not follow, the rules of the festival. What stands out is that, unlike the gradual transformation of Prehevel's residents, which unfolds over many hours or even days, the process happens extremely quickly for the 14 contestants. This may be connected to the moon god's increasingly obvious impatience, as he tries to push the festival toward its conclusion within the 3-day limit.
You are feeling horrible. Your body aches like never before. Something is moving inside you. Something primal is trying to get out of your hollow shell. Your body, it's bursting at its seams.
The moon-scorched forms of the contestants are also described in far greater detail than those of ordinary civilians and soldiers. In my analysis video on the moon god, I once proposed a theory. This god's power is not simply about deforming a victim's body with light. It operates through a far more subtle and complex psychological mechanism. In Carl Jung's model of the self, human beings do not only have the ego, the part of the self that allows them to recognize and understand who they are, but also the shadow, the hidden darkness buried within, containing everything a person refuses to acknowledge about themselves. Selfishness, jealousy, violence, desire, weakness, inferiority, or primal instincts. The truth under the moonlight describes the moon god's light as something capable of exposing the mask that conceals humanity's true and petty nature. This means that he may be able to see through not only the entire nature of humankind, but also the deepest shadow hidden within this species. As analyzed in the lore video on Pocket Cat, the moon god originally represents an aspect of truth. The fact that humans constantly hide the darker parts of themselves behind a false mask may have gone against this god's very nature, making him feel deeply repulsed and eventually giving rise to his hatred for humanity. Moon scorch is the disease the moon god deliberately created to mock the false nature of humankind, a nature that always tries to conceal its shadow. By using light to burn away the mind, the final psychological barrier that holds back the deepest darkness within a person, the moon god is able to dig into what the victim hides, amplify it, and force it to surface in a distorted and hideous form. As a result, the contestants are swallowed by their shadow and transformed into grotesque shapes that reflect the darkest parts they either hide or fail to recognize within themselves. Their personality, profession, trauma, desires, insecurities, fears, or social role. That is the true nature of Moonscorch. And it is also the punishment the moon god casts upon humanity, as well as the contestants who fail to follow the rules of the festival. However, it should be clarified that the contestants' moon-scorched forms are not a complete portrait of who they are. They only reflect the shadow, amplified and twisted into something monstrous. The clearest and most special case is Don, when he transforms into Pocket Cat. At the moment, Don's mind completely collapses under the influence of the moon god's light. Pocket Cat rises up like a part of the shadow buried deep within his subconscious, convincing Don's ego to let go and accept living alongside the darkness. From there, Don fully transforms and becomes Pocket Cat. The moon god is truly cunning for making humans believe that the ugliest, weakest, or most distorted part inside them is their true self. It is an incredibly devious and sly trick. However, considering his hatred for humanity, this act is not too difficult to understand. Anyway, whether they want to or not, all 14 contestants are now trapped in Prehevel and dragged into a fight to the death. The chosen ones, each carrying different missions, beliefs, and purposes, are forced to set out, venture deeper into the city, head toward the moon tower, search for a way out, and beyond that, uncover the true nature of the forces behind this blood-soaked festival.
The moon god is gone. I apologize for such an unpoetic manner of speech, but what you see in the sky is just a barren rock floating in space. The festival of Termina is Rare's doing. That much is true, yes, but those powers are but faint traces left of his existence. Rare, much like the other old gods, left this world a long time ago. You might still be able to harness some of their powers, but like the festival, it is just a faint voice from the past that grants you those gifts. Maybe that is evidence of their true strength, that even in their absence, and in some cases, death, their powers still linger in this world. But without the consciousness behind these powers, their traces are nothing more than any other force of nature. That force is not there to help you, to harm you, or to be worshipped by you. It just exists.
The moon god is gone. The festival of Termina is, at its core, nothing more than the remains of an ancient ritual. Even the festival's reward is only a lingering echo from the age when the old gods still existed in the world of humans. Even the moon god, the deity who once manipulated and corrupted the festival, no longer exists as a god with a complete divine consciousness. What remains in the sky is only a barren rock drifting through space. His power still exists, but it is more like a force of nature, without will, without purpose, simply existing. This leads us to a question. If the moon god has left the world, then why does Perkele continue to play the role of spokesperson and host of the festival? Why can he still maintain Termina, still guide the contestants, still drive the cycle of slaughter, even when his master is no longer present?
The moon god, while gone, his traces remain strong. The festival of Termina is a product of his intense jealousy. But as said before, an intense power without a consciousness behind it is nothing more than a raging force of nature, not unlike a hurricane, an earthquake, or a volcanic eruption. Thus, the festival itself lacks a purpose. We decided to give it one. The effect it has on people creates ample opportunity to grow our ranks and shed blood for our master. We, the cult of sulfur, we choose to live and breathe in chaos, outside the artificial boundaries created by society and mankind. You can either be at the receiving end of the stick or holding it. We choose to hold it. We revel in the blood of the sacrificial lambs. The masses are for slaughter, for the fallen god, the sulfur god. Before the exodus of the gods, there existed one that was banished from the pantheon. As he was chained deep beneath the earth's surface, this fallen one, this fallen god, he was never able to leave this world. He exists beyond the eternal cycle and beyond the greater scheme of things. To celebrate the chaos, we gather souls for the fallen one. As the champion of Termina, you too can join us.
The truth begins to come to light. If the moon god once used Perkele to corrupt the festival without directly interfering, then Perkele has done the very same thing. He has taken advantage of his master's absence to secretly worship and build a cult devoted to another god, the sulfur god. The sulfur god is believed to be one half of Almer, separated from him during the process of his ascension into a more perfect, purer god. That severed half was sealed inside an artifact, then cast by the other half into the sulfur pit. Hundreds of years of burning and imprisonment filled this entity with an overwhelming hatred, to the point that it now seeks to burn the entire world that its original self once wished to save. The full truth behind this god's origin remains a major mystery. We will take the time to analyze it in depth in another video. For now, what we need to know is this. The sulfur god is an incomplete god, sealed away and trapped in the sulfur pit after the old gods departed. This is exactly what places him outside the eternal cycle, outside even the grand design of all things. A variable, an entity that represents chaos, placed within the context of Prehevel, a city with an extreme tradition of worshipping Almer. The appearance of the sulfur god and his cult is no coincidence. We cannot rule out the possibility that the sulfur god exploited the people's faith in Almer to quietly build his own cult from within the very system of worship devoted to the one he hates most. After all, the sulfur god and Almer were once part of the same being. Because of that, confusion in the faith of Prehevel's residents was almost inevitable. There are many details suggesting that the Church of Almer in Prehevel was gradually replaced by something else and rotted from within. The people may not have realized it, but the sacrificial rituals, ancient magic, dark occult practices, and certain statues they believed represented their god all suggest that the faith here had been replaced, twisted, or hijacked by another entity. It is unclear when Perkele came into contact with the sulfur god, or how he became a follower of this deity. But there is one thing we can be almost certain of. Perkele betrayed the moon god, because the sulfur god promised him what he truly desired: freedom.
My master, yes. I know it sounds redundant. To trade the worship of one god to another, trading snake oil for quack remedy. But my master promises freedom. Freedom like you never knew even existed. I know you yearn for that. I can see it in your eyes. You wouldn't be standing here otherwise. Deep down, you know you can never feel fulfillment. there is always something gnawing at the back of your head. You could have all the riches in the world, a harem of 50 lovers, admiration and respect, yet that hollow echo would still emanate from within. Answer me honestly. Have you felt true joy since you were but a naive child? I do not mean a brief moment of happiness, but real joy, one that shines through even during your darkest hour. You do not need to answer. I know the answer. Humans were born to suffer. They possess the eternal hunger that will never be satisfied. To fool themselves, they came up with rules and routine to help pass the time. An artificial sense of achievement, self-defined attributes to determine who is good, bad, successful, or a failure, living in a cage of their own making. If you live in a cage, you are never free. You need to tear that prison down, brick by brick. You must strip yourself of man-made morals and ethics, the rules and routine to pass the time. You must stop passing the time and jump straight to the end. Death awaits at the end, your only salvation. Witness death, deal death, and finally experience death. That is the only way. You do not want to go back as a hollow shell.
Humans suffer because they are trapped inside morality, habit, social identity, and desires that can never truly be satisfied. Only by breaking all of it, even life itself, can they truly escape that cage and attain freedom. That is also the gift the sulfur god promises to those who serve, worship, and offer sacrifices to him. Freedom after death. Perkley, in particular, may have made a secret pact with the sulfur god. He would offer the powerful souls of the contestants and the people across each cycle of the festival to the sulfur god. In return, once this god had gathered enough strength to break free from his current seal, the sulfur god would remove the chains that the moon god had used to bind Perkley. This theory is reinforced when Perkley is defeated. We witness an invisible chain connected to him shatter, right before the moon god descends from the sky. This detail shows that, from the very beginning, Perkley never had full control over his own will. He had been controlled, commanded, and bound by his former master in his role as the host of the festival. It is very possible that when the moon god performed the rebirth ritual and granted Perkley his power, he also bound him with an invisible chain. He forced Perkley to obey and follow wherever the moon god led him, like a dog being dragged around by its master on a leash, unable to resist. The reason behind this may also be very simple. Perkley originally came from humanity, and the moon god has never truly trusted this species. It is also possible that the moon god saw through Perkley's nature from the very beginning, and chaining this cunning man down was simply a way to prevent future trouble. Perhaps Perkley truly served the moon god at first, but after hundreds of years of being led around, after realizing that he was nothing more than a tool, his loyalty began to change. From a chained dog who could only obey and never fight back, once he realized his master was absent, Perkley opened the door for a stranger to enter the very house his old master had built, licking that stranger's boots just so he could help remove his chains. The way Perkley exploits the moon god and clings to the sulfur god proves exactly what the new gods once mocked him for being: a blood-sucking leech who only knows how to cling to the power of greater beings.
Well, isn't that glorious? You have chosen well. However, one last tribulation lies before you. All the souls you sent to our master, now boiling in the presence of his never-ending hatred. To finish your transformation, I need to send you too to his sulfuric cage. You have faced death head-on. The only thing missing is facing the death of yourself. Do not fret. It is like the summer and the winter at the same time. Scorching sun burning your skin, while the long tendrils of the cold freeze you from inside out. Only when you rise back from those dark pits, only then will you be a true representative of the cult of sulfur. The empty man-made morals, that hollow weight stirring deep inside you, all carved out. You will finally know what it means to be truly free. So, as equals, we face each other. I can't wait to tear you to shreds. Do not die too soon, or the ritual will go to waste.
Hiding under the shadow of the moon god, Perkele used the remnants of his power to force the contestants to slaughter one another, then offered the strongest fragments of their souls to his true master, the sulfur god. Not only that, the final survivor, the champion of the festival, would receive an invitation to join the cult. There, they would have to face their own death, then be reborn as a follower of the cult of sulfur, usually recognized by the strange tattoos on their face. On the surface, Perkele succeeded. He used what remained of the moon god as a tool, deceiving the contestants, outmaneuvering the moon god, and turning the festival into a sacrificial machine for the sulfur god. How ironic that the god of deception would be exploited by his own puppet. However, I have to wonder, is the truth really that simple? Could Perkele truly deceive a god known as the all-seeing one in the sky so easily? Think about it. If the moon god had completely vanished, why does the festival still exist and continue to take place? Why did it choose Perhevel, of all places, at this exact point in time? Wasn't it Perkele himself who admitted that, for hundreds of years, he had followed the moon god's guidance, then harvested the crop from the chaos left behind by his moonlight? Could it be that Perkele never truly managed to outwit the moon god? That he is merely standing exactly where this god wanted him to stand? In other words, Perkele's betrayal, the appearance of the 14 contestants, and even the presence of the cult of sulfur, all of it may have been part of the moon god's calculations from the very beginning. Although he has withdrawn from the real world, the moon god remains one of the few old gods still consciously observing humanity from the void. He once sent Pocket Cat and the Lady of Moon to prevent the girl's ascension during the events of the first game, at a time when the old gods had already withdrawn from the physical realm, leaving behind only their traces. If even an event as carefully hidden as the girl's ascension could not escape the moon god's sight, then there is no reason he would be completely unaware of what Perkele has been secretly doing under his shadow and with his power. The point is, if the moon god knows that Perkele is using the festival to free the sulfur god, why does he still allow it to happen? In my view, there are two reasons behind this. First, the moon god cannot directly interfere because he is bound by the pact among the old gods. Although Perkele has betrayed him, he is not truly violating the rules of the festival, He is merely making the festival bloodier, then using that very chaos to indirectly recruit members for the Sulphur God's cult. Second, the Sulphur God is not the real threat to the Moon God. Both the Sulphur God and Almir had long since stepped into the Temple of the Gods. Like a gatekeeper leading into the shrine of the old gods, the Moon God only cares about stopping threats that come from humanity. Perkele worshipping an incomplete god like the Sulphur God, while also turning the festival into a killing machine that plunges humans into chaos, is still far less dangerous than the true threat the Moon God once sensed from the girl and the god of fear and hunger in the first game. Or, on a deeper level, from a new force beginning to rise from beneath the city of Prehevel. That's right. Prehevel is hiding some kind of secret deep underground. Remember the illusion of the girl in red shoes and the secret society that seems to be quietly manipulating events to lead the 14 contestants to Prehevel for some mysterious plan? The Moon God may have discovered that plan. And so, he made the first move by choosing Prehevel as the stage for the Festival of Termina, allowing the festival to corrupt the city during its first 2 stages, turning Prehevel into a battlefield, and finally stopping the secret society's plan the moment the train carrying the 14 contestants entered the city's territory. As mentioned before, the Moon God's goal revolves around one thing only: preventing humanity's ascension. The fact that he interferes to cut off the plan of the girl in red shoes and the secret society shows that this plan is directly connected to a new process of human ascension. More precisely, the birth of a new god with origins in humanity, similar to the girl in the first game, the machine god, or, as it is known by another name, Logic. We will not go too deeply into Logic's lore in this video. What we need to know about this god is that Logic, or the machine god, is an artificial god created from humanity, combined with research into an ancient cube, most likely connected to the Cube of the Depths, an artifact that once belonged to the god of the depth, an old god confirmed to have died in the first game. Basically, Kaiser and the new gods initially worked together, leading to the creation of Project Logic. Ryla, the project's chief engineer, discovered Kaiser's plot to seize Logic for himself. Because of that, she moved the project back to the research facility deep beneath the city of Prehevel. After learning the project's location, Kaiser launched a war targeting the facilities in Bohemia. He sent troops to Prehevel to suppress the city, while personally entering the research site to claim Logic for himself. In a race against time, Rila was forced to activate the project earlier than planned. Although Logic was still incomplete, she entered the machine room herself and became the core of the system. As a result, Rayla was placed into an unfinished state of divine rebirth, a liminal state, suspended between human and God, between Rayla as an individual and the Logic network. She was no longer an ordinary human, but Logic was not yet a complete God either. To help Ryla fully ascend, the new gods secretly manipulated the flow of fate, guiding the 14 contestants to Prehevel. Their purpose was to use these special individuals to support the birth of Logic. Similar to the case of the girl in the first game, the moon god discovered the new god's plan. Because of that, he chose Prehevel as the next stage for the Festival of Termina, turning the festival into a tool to directly obstruct this scheme. This is reinforced through a line of dialogue from one of the 14 contestants, Samari. She implies that the festival did not happen by chance. The moon god chose this place deliberately, and if the player discovers the true purpose of the festival, there may still be another path out of Termina. Ryla's appearance right from the opening, as well as in several other locations, is not entirely random either. Beneath the illusion of a girl in red shoes with blue butterfly wings, Ryla is actually trying to guide the contestants toward the true way out of the festival, a path that does not require obeying the festival's rules of slaughter. With the appearance of logic, Termina is no longer simply a survival battle between 14 strangers. It has become a chaotic battlefield for greater forces, the gods. The entire Festival of Termina event in 1942, simply put, revolves around the confrontation between the moon god and logic. While the moon god is trying to prevent the birth of a new god born from humanity. Through the festival, Ryla, Logic's host, is trying to guide the contestants into breaking Termina's rules, descending into the white bunker, and helping her complete her ascension. Pericles' betrayal, along with the appearance of the sulfur god, is a dangerous variable, but overall, it does not affect the moon god's calculations or the true center of the grand scheme. The Festival of Termina can be seen as a broader, more complex version of the first game, where multiple forces appear at once and fight for control over humanity's future. This is partly hinted at in the game's logo, where we can see the symbols of the moon god, the sulfur god, logic, all mare, along with traces of forces such as the new gods, the old gods, and humanity revolving around them. It is like a miniature symbolic map of the entire conflict in Fear and Hunger 2, Termina, where old gods, new gods, technology, cults, and human ambition all collide within a single festival. We, as one of the 14 contestants, are ultimately placed before 3 paths. The first path: obey the rules of the festival, stain our hands with the blood of the other 13 contestants, and leave Prehevel with our body still alive, but our mind deeply scarred. The second path: accept Pericles' invitation, die, be reborn, and become a follower of the sulfur god. From there, we continue to slaughter and offer souls to our new master in future cycles of the festival, until this entity finally breaks free from its chains, drowns the world in blood and fire, and grants us its final blessing, freedom through death. The third path is to help Ryla complete her ascension, allowing Logic's power to break the structure of the festival and open a way out for the surviving contestants. As for us, she invites us to join a world she calls the Promised Land, a warm, peaceful place where we can finally rest, or at least that is the feeling this world gives us. No matter which path we choose, in my view, Termina does not truly have a complete good ending. After all the suffering, loss, and horror, humans in this world are still far too small. They are pulled back and forth between gods, cults, war, technology, and schemes far beyond their ability to control. In a bitter way, this makes Pericles' mockery truer than ever. Humans always believe they can decide their own fate, but most of the time, they are only struggling inside systems that were already built long before them. And so, the Festival of Termina comes to an end, leaving behind a great question mark over humanity's bleak future. Will humans continue living inside the same old cycle, under the shadow of gods who have already departed, yet still left behind the remnants of their power? Will the sulfur god rise and drown the world in blood, fire, and hatred? Or will logic open a new chapter, where humanity can break free from the old order and create its own paradise? Honestly, I am not sure either. But that ambiguity is exactly what gives Fear and Hunger its unique appeal. This series does not give us satisfying answers. It always leaves behind cracks, theories, and unfinished mysteries, forcing us to keep thinking about them long after the game has ended. I hope that in the third game, we will get more answers to the mysteries that remain unresolved. Or, even more interestingly, Perhaps it will open up new questions, new layers of lore, and lead us into an even darker journey through this brutal world. Before ending the video, I want to thank the core members of the channel, the people who directly support the creation of videos like this. Thanks to your companionship and support, the channel can maintain its schedule of new video releases and continue developing long-form, heavily researched content like this. So I truly want to send my sincere thanks to all of you. If you also enjoy the content I make and want to support the channel moving forward, you can consider joining our community of 1,000 core members. I will leave the link to join in the comment section below. Thank you all so much, and see you in the next video.